This is Managing Mayhem.
Brought to you by two lawyers and a layman.
Because good intentions are not a legal defense.
Wait, I'm sorry, they're not? Okay, well, let's get going then. Hello and welcome to Managing Mayhem with Patty, Jeff, and Jack. What are we cracking down on today?
What's happening?
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, same question. We're in
Well,
sync.
I'll tell you what we're doing. Today we're talking a little progressive discipline. But before we jump in, I do want to make an announcement. Our episodes going forward are SHRM certified.
Woo.
And
Yeah.
you'll be eligible to get 0.25 credits for each episode. So
Make SHRM to go and get those credits.
yeah, to listen to the end. And we'll give a code so you can get those credits.
So today we're talking about progressive discipline.
It sounds like the opposite of progressive insurance, like just progressive, but you're getting in trouble for getting in the car accident. It's just like a mother figure that just comes and disciplines you.
Flow.
It's just flow.
I guess
comes.
that is that character.
Right.
What is progressive discipline actually?
Well, I like to think of progressive discipline like the old progressive dinners that my mom and dad used to go to. Have you heard of progressive dinners?
Just a very modern, forward-thinking dinner, right?
It's the minds of the future.
Right.
Actually, what it was is that I thought it was so cool. My generation didn't do it. My parents, you'd go to each neighbor's house, one for happy hour. Then you'd progress to the next house for appetizers, and then for the main dish, and then dessert. And you'd progress to various homes.
That sounds really actually fun, and I want to do that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It requires you to know
your
a
neighbor.
Yeah, exactly. A certain number of people in the neighborhood.
But all you have to do is prep one thing.
Yeah.
You don't have to have people at your house the whole night. And then you get to go see other people's places and say, hey, it's kind of low stress.
I think it's cool. And
I like it. I'm super into that.
Now, you may not like being part of a progressive discipline plan.
I think I'd like that too.
It doesn't come with like little snacks.
Here's happy hour and an oral warning.
That's right. And the main course will be
A full termination.
The reason it reminds me of progressive dinners is because it's steps. And, the whole point of progressive discipline are to progress slowly through steps, whether they be coaching, oral warning, written warning, suspension, termination. But now all I'm going to think is a shish kebab is that the termination because it's the main dish? I don't know.
Right.
like, oh God. So why is progressive discipline important?
Well, the real goal with progressive discipline is you want to retain employees. You don't want to just terminate them for any little problem or any little thing that they do. But you want to get them back on track, as well as you want to give them an opportunity to correct what they're doing wrong. It's a fundamental fairness. And so it's nice to kind of have these steps of, hey, you're doing this, let's get you back on track. And if you don't get back on track, there are further consequences.
Then here comes the shish kebab.
Right.
And here comes the shish kebab. Little smoky shish kebab.
Spicy.
I just want the wonton appetizer. I'll take the oral warning.
Yeah, and I'll head right on home.
But it also clearly, any type of progressive discipline is also designed to protect the company through documentation so that you avoid any discrimination or wrongful termination claim. You want to show that you had legitimate business reasons for the ultimate discipline or termination if it leads to that. So
it's really there to actually help both parties. One person gets to learn as they go and they're aware if they're making mistakes, and the other person knows that they've documented and communicated.
Right. Win-win.
Every relationship should do that. My marriage, I wish we did that more often.
You're not married, but
If I were married, damn, would we be
progressing. Let's move on.
progressive? All right, I'm holding you guys hostage at this question. All right. So that makes sense. So, will you walk me through how it works? Actually,
Okay, so let's take a situation. We have Paula.
Okay.
Paula is responsible for closing the store. She has to turn off the lights. She has to count the tills. She has to lock up at the end of the shift. And Paula keeps forgetting to turn off the lights. Even though she's only been employed there a few days, she just won't turn off the lights. So that's an example of a scenario that we're going to take her down the friendly, progressive, discipline road.
I'm glad you finished that sentence.
We're gonna take
We're gonna take her down. Take
to
her down.
progressive discipline road.
Okay.
So the first step going on the discipline road is it's informal coaching, right? This is what most managers do day in, day out. It's to educate them or remind them about the rules, expectations. It's like, hey, Paula, you forgot to turn off the lights 2 nights in a row. You need to turn them off. It's important. You really don't have to document this unless you want to. Some managers do. They keep like a little coaching log of, kudos and a little course correction comments like this. But at this point in time, it's not essential to do that.
Okay. Okay. So how many coachings would you give after one? Is it a coaching anymore?
It depends on the issue. I mean,
Yeah.
if you just do like 10 coachings, no one's going to take you seriously as a manager.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
They're going to be like, they're a soft boss, meaning you're not going to discipline us.
You're talking to me?
Yeah.
So I think that the key, though, is to make sure you've communicated the job expectations in the orientation or in the training or, any type of job description so that she knows her job is to turn off the lights. So if you've told her that, you've trained her in that, and she's still not doing it, to me, I don't know, it's only 1 or 2 times that I'm going to coach her because I don't want to spend my time nagging someone as a manager to do some basic skill set.
Right. Something essential to their job, what they were hired to do.
Right.
Shutting the door.
And the lights.
Turn off the
Shut it
lights.
off.
When you ask how many times you do have to coach, I mean, we get it a lot where a manager comes up and they're like, hey, I want to terminate this employee. They're a terrible employee. Paula never turns off the lights. I tell her to turn off the lights every day and she never does it. And then they've just never progressed it to the next step. It's all coaching. There's no documentation. And they've never actually escalated that to the next step. And so it makes it really hard.
And that doesn't seem fair.
Right. I understand the frustration, but you're also like,
Not communicating clearly.
right. You need to show the gravity of the situation to the employee by progressing.
Did you threaten her job? No, I'm kidding.
Right. Well, I remember I worked at a restaurant, and I did get fired from that restaurant, and that's okay with me. But I remember that kind of having a similar situation where someone was like, if I was like 5 minutes late, they was like, no big deal, or hey, just no worries, make sure you're on time. And then at the end, the hammer came down, and they're like, well, you were late. And you're like, well, I kind of felt like we were just talking about it. No one actually gave me a talking to.
Right, exactly.
That was like,
Right.
or was that? Did I miss the talking to?
Right. When did this become terminable? Because
Right.
it seemed like, okay.
Yeah, you were totally chill with it every other day.
Exactly.
Right. And to me, there is some form of due process. It's not required by law, but we're trying to turn people around and we're trying to make the behavior comply with your policies. You're not trying to just like, surprise, you're fired. I mean,
Well,
that's
because
not
then it
the
made
goal.
it feel like they just wanted that day to fire me for no, like, and they just felt like they had a reason to fire me.
Right.
And I was like,
Right.
well, that's not cool. You literally didn't say that it was a problem until
Exactly.
now. And I would have, if told, I would have for sure been still 10 minutes late and gotten fired anyway.
Because you hated that job.
Because I hated that job and God, was it toxic. Okay, so what's the next step then?
After coaching, you bump it up to an oral warning.
Okay. And is that how is that different from coaching, just the title?
Well, it's just the title.
The tone of voice.
No, it's more charged language in that you're going to say, hey, Paula, you have not been turning off the lights. It's a cost on the company. I've coached you numerous times, but if it continues, there's going to be more serious disciplinary action. Essentially, you're saying,
Okay.
we're going to step it up.
There's a threat in there. I hate to say it, but there is a threat.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, then X will happen.
Right.
So
Right, that makes sense. We've changed now.
the thing that you don't have to do is you don't have to say, incoming oral warning. This is an oral warning. You don't have to label it oral warning. You just go in and say, I've coached you. You're doing this, just like Jeff said. But you don't have to label it. You don't have to have them sign the oral warning to make it official, because then that's actually a written warning.
Okay.
So don't worry about all the semantics. We're just talking about progressing, coaching to oral warning that says if this continues, this is going to be an issue.
Okay, so you have the coaching phase. Then you have the warning phase where you say, this is what it is. If you keep doing it, this is going to be the repercussion. And then what's the next? There's more consequences?
I will say this, though, before we go to the next consequence, is that with the oral warning, you do have to document it.
Okay.
You have to put it in a follow-up email or some sort of documentation to them. That doesn't make it turn into a written warning. It's still an
Right.
oral warning. But easily, the easiest one to do is just put in an email saying, hey, we spoke. These are my expectations. This is what's going to happen if you don't change the behavior, if you don't turn off the lights. And I just want to send this follow-up email about our conversation. That's it.
I think there's a saying in litigation, very exciting saying, but an oral warning not documented, it didn't occur. It's like, I mean,
Right.
because you don't have any evidence of, but that is very different than making them sign it. I just want to make
no.
sure everyone's clear. We're just talking about internally documenting it, not to have them sign a piece of paper saying that you gave
Okay.
them an oral warning.
Okay.
Right.
That makes sense. So hopefully things get better and Paula turns the lights off and life is good. But there's also a world where she doesn't. And if
Right.
in that third week she doesn't, then what happens? What's the next step for her?
That's when you take her down. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm joking. I'm joking. Then we go to a written warning, and a written warning is more confrontational. It is more uncomfortable, so a lot of supervisors avoid it. And this is where you get in a trap where you're just coaching, an oral warning, and
Right.
at some point you're going to have to put it in a document, cite the facts, the policy they violated,
Right.
the discipline, your expectation, and you're going to have them sign it. And so you can keep it in the personnel file. You have to
Right.
do this even though it's uncomfortable, or else things are not going to change for you.
Right. And you are going to have to CC their parents on that email.
Right. Parents and grandparents if necessary.
Yeah. And when you see that any CC on a written warning, that does scare me. That shakes me to my core.
Right.
And some people refuse to sign them, huh, Joe?
Yeah, but you still give it to them. You sign it, and then you write, they refuse to sign it.
Exactly.
No.
Right. I won't
Okay.
sign it. Please be mature about this.
Still happened if you don't sign it.
Right.
Okay, so do we then terminate employment if things don't change?
You'll do a final warning or a job in jeopardy.
Okay.
That's the next step. This is usually there's a probation period, and then there's a decision-making plan or a performance improvement plan, or there's some sort of plan in place where you give them goals and how you need to see them progress and improve. And if they don't, then essentially you're going to move to termination.
Mm-hmm. Another option with the final warning or job in jeopardy, or your that makes it feel very scary, is also to give them a suspension without pay. So, okay, you keep doing this, we don't want to fire you, but we're going to give you a final warning and suspend you without pay for 2 days. So hopefully they'll get the message that this is really important to us. So some people think of it as a vacation, but that is that option.
Yeah, the suspension without pay, it's one of those where it can. I don't know. It's not my favorite.
I wouldn't do it
Okay.
with excessive absenteeism.
Right,
They're like,
right.
"Shut."
Yeah.
Amazing. I love
So
this
I
job.
can go home now.
But if she's not turning the lights off, then it becomes more serious.
Right.
Yeah.
So you always have to follow these steps, it sounds like.
No, you don't. You can bypass any of them if the employee does something serious, and it just depends on the situation. So,
Okay.
If Paula leaves the door unlocked all
Mhm.
night, that's much more serious than just turning off the lights, not turning off the lights. And so that's
Right.
something that I would probably do, written warning or potentially termination. I mean, because the building's open, right?
Right. Different than the lights being off. You're not wasting power. You're putting the stuff in jeopardy.
Right. It's a different risk.
Same as if you left the till, open, or money
Right.
was missing from the till because she's
Yeah.
responsible for closing out the till.
Okay.
Anything. I mean, I don't know many employers that wouldn't go straight to either written warning, suspension, or termination. She left that place unlocked all night. And then obviously, if something happens, then like if you leave it never mind. Go ahead.
Well, it's like the progression of discipline matches the severity of what's done.
Right.
So if it's something small, like not turning off the lights, then there's the slower steps. It's more progressive. But yeah, the more dangerous things where you're leaving things unprotected or things can be stolen because of what you've done, then we skip some steps.
Right.
One suggestion for managers would be don't feel that you're bound to the progressive discipline, because I know Patty and I get a lot of calls where we're like, why didn't you give them a written warning or a final warning for X, Y, or Z? And the manager's like, well, we hadn't done the oral warning. And so don't feel bound to it, as well as don't feel like the employee can hold you hostage to it. as far as, well, I get an oral warning first. You can't just skip it. Every policy should have the carve out that we can jump to whatever level we need to.
Right. Check also with HR to get consistency within your organization. Say, hey, what are we doing with other people that have this safety violation, or that people are wasting resources like leaving lights on? Because you don't want to have inconsistency within departments, branches, the organization, that you're treating someone much more severely than someone else. So we want Paula to get consistent treatment. If everyone's getting a written warning, Paula gets a written warning. So
Hard too, because if the policies can be loose, if some people can have different ones, or if people don't enforce them the same to everybody, then that seems like you just have to be consistent and clear.
Absolutely.
But you don't have to progressive discipline. It's not required, but it helps turn employees around. It gives them opportunity to notice problems, make change. So you have the coaching, oral warning, written warning, suspension without pay, potentially, unless that person just the person doesn't want to show up, maybe something else, and then ultimately termination. But you don't even have to follow that order.
Right. Just keep HR in the loop. They're there as a wingman for you to look over your documentation as you go through that process. But it is designed to be a win-win for both the employee and the employer. So
your true goal is to keep the employee. That should be your goal.
Keep them close. Keep them well.
Keep Paula until we cannot.
So you
Until
guys
you find someone else to shut the light down.
You guys, we have something free coming up, and it's a free webinar on May 24th from 10 to 11 Mountain Time.
Don't say we never give you anything.
You can find the link in the bio of this week's episode. All SHRM members are eligible to get 1 SHRM credit for attending, and we have a lot of people already registered, so go ahead and do that. You can also go on managementnorthwest.com to do so.
Yeah, and as we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, this episode is approved for 0.25 SHRM credits, and I'll give you the code now.
Drum roll, write this down.
Write it down. It is 24-9JSJA.
Great.
And I'm sure it's going to be a really good time.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
Oh, God.
And we will be taking off next week, May 29th, for Memorial Day. Enjoy Memorial Day. We'll be back June 5th.
Go start those progressive dinners. Get some friends in the neighborhood. And
I seriously am going to do it with my building. I know a couple people, and we're going to do it.
There you go. That's good.
awesome.
I like that.
Okay, guys.
Sounds like I know no one. Okay, bye.
Have a great week. Talk to you later.
Managing Mayhem is presented by Management Northwest and Management Southwest and cannot be copied or rebroadcast without prior written consent. By listening to this podcast, you understand that we, or at least 2 of us, are lawyers, but we are not your lawyers. Therefore, nothing we say on the podcast should be taken as legal advice or considered to create an attorney-client relationship. It is solely